I bought a beach house to enjoy my retirement, but my son bring a crowd. So I surprised them. My name is Edna, 61 years old, and I just sold the marketing company I built from scratch. After 30 years of hard work, I finally bought my dream beach house in Florida. Standing on the porch that first evening, watching the sunset over the ocean, I felt true peace. Then my phone rang. It was my son Thomas. His words shocked me to my core. "Move to the guest room, Mom. We are bringing my wife's entire family. If you do not like it, I heard there is a nursing home down the street. Let me know where you are watching from and hit that like and subscribe button as I tell you exactly what I prepared for my ungrateful son and his entitled in-laws." I never had it easy. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Ohio, I learned the value of hard work from my parents who ran a small grocery store. By 18, I knew I wanted more from life, so I put myself through college while working 2 jobs. My marketing degree opened doors, but it was my determination that built my future. I met Walter during my junior year. He was charming, ambitious, and swept me off my feet. We married young, both 23, full of dreams about conquering the business world together. For a while, things were perfect. We both landed jobs at the same advertising firm in Chicago, rented a cute apartment downtown, and started saving for our future. When I turned 28, I discovered I was pregnant with Thomas. Walter and I were thrilled decorating the nursery and picking out names. Thomas arrived on a snowy December morning, perfect, with 10 tiny fingers and toes. I fell in love instantly and took 6 months off work to care for him. The cracks in our marriage started showing when I returned to my job. Walter resented splitting childcare duties and complained that I was not the same fun-loving woman he married. When Thomas turned 3, Walter announced he had found someone else, someone without the baggage of motherhood. The divorce was ugly, with Walter fighting to pay minimal child support while keeping most of our savings. Suddenly, I was a single mother with a preschooler and bills piling up. The advertising company I worked for was downsizing, and my position felt precarious. Instead of giving in to despair, I took the biggest risk of my life. With my last $5,000, I started my own marketing consultancy from our dining room table. I worked while Thomas napped, made calls during his preschool hours, and built client presentations late into the night. Those early years were brutal. There were nights I cried silently after Thomas went to bed, terrified I would fail him. But slowly, client by client, my business grew. By the time Thomas started elementary school, I had 3 employees and a real office. I chose an apartment close to the best public school in the district, even though it stretched my budget to the breaking point. Thomas was a bright boy, curious and creative. Despite my busy schedule, I never missed a school play or parent-teacher conference. I wanted him to have everything I never had as a child. When he showed interest in science, I scraped together money for summer camps and science kits. When he needed braces, I took out a loan rather than settling for the basic option covered by insurance. High school brought new challenges. Thomas excelled academically but wanted the same expensive clothes and gadgets as his wealthier friends. I worked longer hours, taking on more clients to ensure he never felt different from his peers. When he was accepted to Cornell University with a partial scholarship, I was overjoyed but terrified about covering the remaining costs. I remortgaged our home and put off replacing my aging car to make it happen. Those college years stretched me thin financially, but I never let Thomas know. Every month, I sent care packages and spending money, wanting him to focus on studies rather than finances. He graduated with honors in business, and I sat in the audience bursting with pride, all the sacrifices worthwhile. The changes in Thomas began subtly during his final year at college. His calls home became less frequent, his tone more distant. When he did call, he spoke more about networking opportunities than our relationship. I told myself this was normal, a sign of healthy independence. After graduation, Thomas moved to New York for a position at a prestigious consulting firm. During one of his rare visits home, he introduced me to Marilyn, a colleague from a wealthy Connecticut family. She was beautiful, polished, and obviously unimpressed by my modest home and practical lifestyle. Their wedding a year later was an elaborate affair paid for by her parents. I contributed what I could, though Marilyn made it clear my input was unnecessary. At the reception, I overheard her telling a friend how Thomas had come from such simple beginnings but was adapting well to their circle. After the wedding, our already strained relationship deteriorated further. Thomas and Marilyn bought a brownstone in Brooklyn that I could never afford to visit more than once a year. When they had their first child, Madison, I flew out immediately, eager to meet my granddaughter. Marilyn seemed annoyed by my presence, scheduling numerous playdates and appointments during my stay. I barely held my granddaughter that entire week. Their second child, Lucas, arrived 18 months later. This time, Marilyn suggested I wait a month before visiting, as they would be adjusting to life with two children. When I finally visited, I was relegated to a nearby hotel rather than their guest room, which Marilyn explained was now a home office. Through all this, my business continued to thrive. I expanded into digital marketing, hired talented young employees, and eventually opened offices in 3 cities. Work became my refuge from the pain of my increasingly distant relationship with Thomas. I poured myself into building a legacy, partly hoping that someday Thomas would recognize and appreciate what I had accomplished. As I approached 60, several larger marketing firms expressed interest in acquiring my company. After much consideration, I decided it was time to sell and enjoy the fruits of my labor. The sale went through just after my 61st birthday, leaving me with a substantial retirement fund and the freedom to finally pursue my dreams. For 30 years, through every difficult moment, I had dreamed of a house by the ocean. Growing up in landlocked Ohio, the sea represented freedom and possibility to me. Now, I could finally make that dream a reality. I spent 3 months searching for the perfect property, something just for me. I finally found it in a beautiful oceanfront community in Florida. A gorgeous 3-bedroom house with large windows overlooking the Atlantic, a wraparound porch, and a small private path leading directly to the beach. It cost nearly 2/3 of my retirement fund, but the moment I walked through the door, I knew it was home. The closing process took another 2 months, during which I sold my home in Chicago and carefully selected which belongings would come with me to my new life. I called Thomas to share my excitement, leaving a voicemail when he didn't answer. He texted back a brief congratulations 3 days later. Finally, moving day arrived. I hired professionals to handle the transportation of my belongings, treating myself to first-class service after decades of doing everything the budget way. The movers were efficient and respectful, placing everything exactly where I wanted in my new home. That first evening alone in my beach house felt magical. I unpacked just enough to make the master bedroom comfortable, then made a simple dinner which I ate on the porch watching the sun set over the ocean. The sound of waves gently lapping at the shore provided the perfect soundtrack to my first night of true freedom. As darkness fell, I felt at peace in a way I hadn't experienced since childhood. This house represented not just a place to live, but the culmination of a lifetime of work and sacrifice. It was my reward, my sanctuary, and my future. As I prepared for bed, feeling grateful and content, my phone rang. Seeing Thomas's name on the screen filled me with unexpected joy. Perhaps he was calling to properly congratulate me on my new home and retirement. Perhaps our relationship could begin anew in this fresh chapter of my life. How wrong I was. It was 9:30 in the evening when my phone lit up with Thomas's call. I answered eagerly, hoping to share my excitement about my first day in the beach house. Thomas didn't bother with pleasantries. His voice was cool and businesslike, as if addressing an employee rather than his mother. "Mom, we are coming to visit your new place next week. All of us." My heart leapt at the thought of seeing my grandchildren despite the abrupt announcement. I started to express my delight when he continued. "When I say all of us, I mean all of us. Marilyn, the kids, and her family too. Her parents, her brother Jake and his wife Laura, her sister Samantha with her husband and their kid. We need the master bedroom since there are 2 of us, plus occasionally the kids might sleep with us." I sat down slowly on my new sofa, trying to process this information. That would be 9 adults and 3 children in my 3-bedroom house. I stammered, "Thomas, I just moved in. I am not set up for that many guests." He cut me off. "Mom, this is perfect timing. Marilyn's family has been wanting to do a beach vacation, and when they heard about your place, it just made sense. You will need to move your stuff out of the master bedroom. We will take that one. Marilyn's parents can have the 2nd bedroom, and you can use the small guest room or the sofa. The others will figure something out." I felt as if I had been slapped. "Thomas, this is my home. I just bought it. I have not even unpacked. And the master bedroom is mine." There was a pause before Thomas replied, his voice now cold. "Look, Mom, this is happening. We are all taking time off work and making arrangements. Marilyn's family does not get many chances to all vacation together. If you do not like the arrangement, I heard there is a nursing home down the street. Maybe they have vacancies. I was speechless. My own son was threatening to send me to a nursing home if I didn't surrender my brand new house to his wife's family. The phone felt heavy in my hand as I struggled to find words. Thomas seemed to take my silence as agreement. Great. We will arrive next Friday around noon. Make sure the place is clean and stocked with food. Marilyn's mom has dietary restrictions, no gluten or dairy, and Jake's kid only eats organic. We will stay for 2 weeks. Gotta go, Marilyn's calling me. The call ended before I could respond. I sat motionless on the sofa phone, still pressed to my ear, listening to nothing. Tears welled in my eyes, not just of sadness, but of utter disbelief. How had my son become this person? What had I done wrong in raising him that he could treat me with such disregard? I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Thomas's cold voice suggesting a nursing home. I tossed and turned in my new bedroom, the one he expected me to vacate for him and Marilyn. The room I had carefully selected furniture for the room positioned to catch both sunrise and sunset through its perfectly placed windows. As I lay awake, memories flooded back of other instances when Thomas had shown this same callousness. There was the Christmas 5 years ago when he and Marilyn arrived 3 hours late for dinner, offering no apology. The time he forgot my birthday entirely, then sent a generic gift card 3 weeks later. The graduation ceremony for my business leadership program that he skipped for a golf game with Marilyn's father. Each memory brought fresh pain, but also clarity. I had raised Thomas to believe he was the center of my universe, and now he expected to be the center of everyone's universe. I had worked so hard to give him everything that he now felt entitled to take everything. Morning came after a mostly sleepless night. I made coffee and took it out to the porch, watching the sunrise over the ocean. As the golden light spread across the water, I felt a strange calm replace yesterday's shock. This house was mine. I had earned it. No one had the right to take it from me, not even my son. My phone rang again. Thomas. I almost didn't answer, but some maternal instinct made me pick up. Mom, I forgot to mention that Marilyn wants to know if you have beach chairs and umbrellas. Also, do you have a grill? Jake wants to do a barbecue night. And make sure there are enough towels for everyone. Beach towels and bath towels. Can you pick up some toys for the kids' beach toys? And make sure the Wi-Fi is good. Jake needs to check in with work. It was as if last night's conversation had been perfectly normal, as if I had agreed to turn my home into a free resort for his in-laws. The casual way he issued demands without a hint of appreciation sent a surge of anger through me. Thomas, I said, my voice steadier than I expected, we need to discuss this visit. I am not prepared to host 11 people in my new home. He sighed loudly, the sound of a man dealing with an unreasonable child. Mom, we already booked our flights. This is happening. Just make it work. I will text you a list of what we need. The call ended, and minutes later, my phone pinged with a text message. It was a detailed list of requirements, everything from specific brands of sunscreen to particular types of wine that Marilyn's father preferred. No, please, no thank you, not even an acknowledgement that he was asking for favors rather than issuing commands. I set my coffee cup down carefully, took a deep breath of salt air, and made a decision. I would not be pushed out of my own home. I would not be treated as a servant by my son and his wife's family. It was time Thomas learned about consequences. My neighbor Betty was watering her flowers when I stepped outside later that morning. She was a lively 70-year-old with silver hair and the deep tan of someone who had lived by the ocean for decades. We had met briefly when I was closing on the house, and she had promised to show me around the community. Betty, I called out, could I trouble you for some advice? Over iced tea on her porch. I explained my situation, feeling somewhat embarrassed to admit how my own son was treating me. To my surprise, Betty nodded in understanding. Honey, she said my daughter tried the same thing when I moved here after her father died. Thought my house was her personal vacation spot. You have to set boundaries early, or they will walk all over you for the rest of your life. What did you do? I asked. Betty grinned. I changed the locks while she and her friends were at the beach one day. Left their stuff on the porch with a note suggesting a nice hotel down the road. She was furious, didn't speak to me for 3 months. Then she called on my birthday and we had the most honest conversation we'd had in years. Now she visits twice a year, calls before coming, and always brings a gift. Respect has to be earned, Edna. Sometimes the hard way. I laughed, imagining the look on Thomas's face if I tried something similar. But my situation was more complicated with a large group, including children, planning to descend on me. Do you have a good lawyer? Betty asked. Because ownership has its privileges. As it happened, I did have an excellent lawyer. Sarah had handled the sale of my business and helped with the purchase of the beach house. She was competent, discreet, and unafraid of difficult situations. I called her office from Betty's porch and was fortunate to catch her between appointments. Edna, what can I do for you? Sarah asked, her voice crisp and professional. I explained the situation, feeling more confident now that I was taking action rather than just reacting. When I finished, there was a moment of silence before Sarah spoke. Let me be clear, she said. You own this property outright, correct? Yes, I confirmed. No mortgage, no co-owners, and there was no agreement that your son or his family would have any right to use the property, none whatsoever. Then, legally, you are on solid ground to deny them entry. It's your house, your rules. If they show up and refuse to leave when asked, that would constitute trespassing. I considered this. While I wanted to stand my ground, I wasn't sure I could handle directly confronting Thomas and turning away my grandchildren at the door. Sarah seemed to sense my hesitation. Edna, there are other ways to handle this besides direct confrontation. Sometimes the most effective lessons come from allowing people to experience the natural consequences of their actions within a controlled environment. What are you suggesting? I asked. Well, she replied, you mentioned your son expects your home to function as a free resort for his extended family. Perhaps you should show him exactly what that would entail from a business perspective. As Sarah outlined her idea, I felt a smile spreading across my face. It was perfect. Not a confrontation, but a lesson. Not a punishment, but an education. By the time we ended the call, I had the beginnings of a plan. I thanked Betty for her advice and hospitality, then returned to my house with a renewed sense of purpose. First, I needed to find temporary accommodations for myself during Thomas's visit. I contacted a local real estate agent who specialized in short-term luxury rentals and explained my situation. She was discreet and efficient, quickly sending me listings for available properties nearby. One caught my eye immediately. A stunning modern villa just 3 blocks from my house with 4 bedrooms, a private pool, and an unobstructed ocean view. It was expensive, more than I would normally spend, but this was an investment in my future relationship with my son. I booked it for 1 month, giving myself plenty of time before and after Thomas's visit. Next, I reached out to a high-end property management company that specialized in luxury vacation rentals. The manager, Alicia, came to see my house that afternoon. She was impressed with the property and intrigued by my unusual request. So you want us to manage your home as if it were a rental property, but only for these specific guests who don't know they're being treated as rental clients, she clarified. Exactly, I confirmed. I want them to experience exactly what it would be like if they had booked a luxury beach house through your company, including all the rules, responsibilities, and costs involved. Alicia's professional demeanor cracked slightly as she smiled. Mrs. Patterson, I have been in this business for 15 years, and this is certainly a unique situation. But I think we can accommodate your request. Our standard vacation rental agreement includes security deposits, cleaning fees, inventory checklists, and strict rules about occupancy limits and property use. Perfect, I said. And what would a 2-week rental of this property normally cost? Alicia looked around, making mental calculations. For a premium oceanfront property like this during high season with the maximum occupancy you described, between $15,000 and $20,000 depending on specific dates and services requested. I nodded, unsurprised. I had researched comparable rentals online. And what about damage deposits and additional fees? For a group this size, we would require a $5,000 refundable security deposit plus our standard cleaning fee of $500. Additional services like mid-stay cleanings, grocery delivery, or chef services would be extra. By the time Alicia left, we had worked out all the details. The property would be professionally cleaned before Thomas's arrival with fresh linens, towels, and basic supplies provided. A detailed inventory would be taken with photos documenting the condition of everything from furniture to kitchenware. House rules would be clearly posted, including quiet hours, maximum occupancy for each room, and proper use of facilities. Most importantly, all of this would be presented to Thomas and his group upon arrival, not by me, but by Alicia's most professional staff member, complete with clipboards, contracts, and payment processing equipment. With the property management arranged, I focused on preparing myself for the temporary move. I needed to decide which personal items to take with me to the rental villa and which could remain in the house. Obviously, clothing and toiletries would come with me, along with my laptop and important documents. I went through each room methodically, identifying irreplaceable or valuable items that should not be left behind. Family photos, jewelry, and sentimental objects would come with me. Expensive electronics, art pieces, and fragile decorative items were carefully packed and temporarily removed. I arranged for a storage unit nearby for the larger items. In the master bedroom, I replaced my high-end linens with quality but less expensive alternatives. I emptied the closet of my clothing but left the hangers. In the attached bathroom, I removed my personal care products but stocked it with new, unopened hotel-quality toiletries. Throughout the house, I made similar adjustments, creating a space that was beautiful and functional but not filled with my most precious possessions. I wanted Thomas and his group to enjoy a lovely vacation home, but not to have unrestricted access to the most personal aspects of my life. The security system was my final concern. I upgraded to a comprehensive package that included multiple cameras covering the exterior entrances and main living areas, all accessible through my phone. This wasn't about spying, but about maintaining awareness of how my property was being treated in my absence. By the end of the week, everything was in place. I had moved my essential belongings to the rental villa, arranged for the professional management of my home, and prepared myself mentally for what was to come. Sarah had provided me with a folder of legal documents confirming my rights as the property owner and outlining the terms under which I was allowing others to use my home. I slept peacefully that night in the rental villa, no longer dreading Thomas's arrival, but curious to see how my plan would unfold. For the first time since his phone call, I felt in control of the situation. Whatever happened next would be on my terms, not his. The day of Thomas's arrival dawned bright and clear, a perfect Florida beach day. From my rental villa, I could see that the ocean was calm, with gentle waves lapping at the shore. Tourists were already setting up umbrellas on the beach, families with young children building sandcastles near the water's edge. I had breakfast on the terrace, enjoying the morning sunshine and mentally preparing myself for the day ahead. Alicia had texted to confirm that her team had completed the final cleaning of my house and were ready to welcome my guests at noon. The property looked immaculate in the photos she sent, professionally staged, like the luxury vacation rental it was temporarily becoming. At 11:30, I positioned myself at a small cafe with an outdoor seating area that offered a view of my house. I wore a wide-brimmed hat and sunglasses, not really trying to hide, but not wanting to be immediately noticed either. I ordered an iced coffee and settled in to watch. The first to arrive was a large SUV, clearly a rental, which pulled into my driveway at exactly noon. Thomas emerged from the driver's side, looking tired after what had probably been an early morning flight. Marilyn stepped out of the passenger seat, already frowning as she surveyed the property. The back doors opened, and Madison and Lucas tumbled out immediately, running toward the beach, before Thomas called them back sharply. A second car pulled in behind them, this one containing Marilyn's parents. Harold and Patricia Winthrop were exactly as I remembered from the few times we had met, impeccably dressed and wearing matching expressions of vague disapproval. They stood by their luggage, clearly expecting someone else to carry it inside. The third vehicle arrived moments later, a minivan containing Marilyn's siblings and their families. Jake and Laura with their 7-year-old son Ethan, and Samantha with her husband David. They all congregated in the driveway, a group of 11 people with enough luggage for a month-long stay. Thomas approached the front door, trying the handle and looking confused when it didn't open. He checked his phone, presumably looking for a message from me with entry instructions. Finding none, he rang the doorbell. Alicia opened the door, clipboard in hand, professional smile firmly in place. From my vantage point, I couldn't hear the conversation, but I could see Thomas's body language shift from confident to confused. He gestured emphatically, pointing to himself and then to the house. Alicia remained poised, occasionally consulting her clipboard and showing Thomas what appeared to be documents. Marilyn joined the conversation, her posture becoming increasingly rigid. She turned to call her parents over, and soon Harold was involved, his face reddening as he gesticulated toward the house. Alicia maintained her professional demeanor, unruffled by their obvious agitation. After about 15 minutes of this back and forth, during which the children grew increasingly restless and the luggage remained on the driveway, Thomas pulled out his phone. Moments later, my phone rang. I let it go to voicemail, curious to see what would happen next. Thomas left an angry message demanding to know what was going on and why there was a property manager at my house instead of me. He followed this with a series of increasingly agitated text messages. "Mom, what is going on? Where are you? This woman says we need to sign rental agreements and pay deposits. Is this a joke? Call me back immediately." Marilyn's parents are furious. This is embarrassing. I did not respond. Through my cafe window, I watched as the group huddled in discussion, gesturing angrily at times. Eventually, Thomas seemed to come to a decision. He approached Alicia again, this time with a more conciliatory manner. Papers were exchanged, and Thomas reluctantly signed several documents. Only then did Alicia step aside and allow them to enter the house, though she followed them in with her clipboard still in hand. The other adults began carrying luggage inside while the children ran ahead, eager to explore their new surroundings. I finished my coffee and returned to my rental villa. There, I opened my laptop and connected to the security system. The cameras showed Thomas and Marilyn in what had been my bedroom, arguing intensely. Marilyn was gesturing to the closet, apparently displeased with the lack of space for her extensive wardrobe. Thomas was on his phone again, presumably trying to reach me. In the living room, Marilyn's parents had claimed the best seats and were directing the placement of luggage. Jake and Laura were exploring the kitchen, opening cabinets and the refrigerator, looking disappointed at the basic supplies provided. Samantha and David had taken their luggage to the smallest bedroom, resigned to cramped quarters. The children were running through the house, touching everything despite their parents' half-hearted attempts to restrain them. My phone rang again. Thomas. This time I answered. "Where are you?" he demanded without preamble, his voice tight with anger. "Hello, Thomas," I replied calmly. "I trust you found the house without difficulty." "Mom, what is going on? There's some woman here making us sign rental agreements and demanding a $5,000 security deposit. She says we're limited to the number of people who can stay here. And where are all your things?" "The master bedroom closet is empty." I took a deep breath. "Yes, Alicia is from Coastal Luxury Properties. They're managing the house during your stay. As for my belongings, I've moved them to accommodate your group as you requested." There was a moment of stunned silence before he exploded. "You're charging us to stay at your house? Your own family? This is ridiculous. And where are you staying?" "I'm in a rental nearby," I said. "And I'm not charging you, Thomas. Coastal Luxury is managing the property according to standard practices for vacation rentals in this area. What you're experiencing is exactly what would happen if you had booked this house through normal channels, which apparently is what you expected to do without my consent." "This is insane," he sputtered. "We're family, not vacation renters. Call off this property manager and come home." "Marilyn's parents are extremely upset." "I'm sorry they're upset," I said, genuinely meaning it. I didn't want to cause distress to people who were, however distantly connected to my grandchildren. "But this is my home. Thomas, not a free hotel for your in-laws. You didn't ask if you could visit. You demanded I give up my bedroom and suggested I move to a nursing home if I objected." Those aren't the words of a son who respects his mother. They're the words of someone who sees me as nothing more than a convenience. Thomas was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, less entitled, and more uncertain. "I didn't mean the nursing home thing. That was just a joke. It wasn't funny, Thomas. None of this is funny to me. I worked my entire life to afford this house. I sacrificed everything to give you opportunities I never had, and your response was to treat me and my home as if they belonged to you by right." "Look," he said, his voice taking on the placating tone he often used when trying to smooth over a problem. "We can work this out. Just come back and we will figure out the sleeping arrangements. The kids really want to see their grandmother." I closed my eyes, fighting the instinct to give in to do what would make everyone else happy at my expense. "No, Thomas, I won't be coming back during your stay. You and your guests are welcome to enjoy the house under Coastal Luxury's management. All the rules they've outlined are standard for vacation properties of this caliber. If that doesn't work for you, there are many lovely hotels in the area. So that's it, he asked, anger creeping back into his voice. You're choosing a point over your own family. I'm choosing self-respect, Thomas. Something I should have taught you long ago. Enjoy your stay. I ended the call before he could respond, my heart pounding, but my resolve firm. Through the security feed, I watched as Thomas returned to the living room where the others were gathered, looking expectant. He spoke to them, gesturing in apparent frustration. Marilyn's face darkened with anger, and her father stood up, pulling out his own phone as if ready to confront someone. The next few hours were tense, with multiple calls from Thomas that I declined to answer. Alicia texted updates informing me that the security deposit had been reluctantly provided and the rental agreement signed under protest. The group was now officially checked in as guests. By evening, they seemed to have resigned themselves to the situation. The camera feeds showed them settled in various parts of the house. Thomas and Marilyn had claimed the master bedroom as planned. Marilyn's parents took the second largest bedroom, while Jake, Laura, and their son squeezed into the third bedroom. Samantha, David, and Madison were set up in the den with a pull-out sofa, and Lucas was on an air mattress in what would normally be my home office. They ordered pizza for dinner, eating on the patio furniture outside. The adults drank wine from my collection, apparently ignoring the note that alcoholic beverages were available for purchase at additional cost. The children ran wild on the beach until dark, tracking sand throughout the house, despite the clearly posted rule about rinsing off at the outdoor shower. As night fell, the various family members retired to their assigned spaces. Thomas remained in the living room nursing a whiskey and staring at his phone. He tried calling me once more before finally heading to bed. The house grew quiet, with only the security lights illuminating the empty patio where discarded pizza boxes and wine bottles remained uncleaned. I switched off my laptop, feeling a mixture of sadness and resolution. This wasn't how I had imagined the first visitors to my new home would behave, but it was necessary. Thomas needed to learn that actions have consequences, that relationships require respect to flourish. It was a painful lesson, one that might damage our already fragile connection, but it was long overdue. The first few days of Thomas's vacation were visible to me only through the security cameras and Alicia's professional reports. The group settled into a routine of beach activities during the day and elaborate meals in the evening, often leaving the kitchen in disarray despite the house rules about cleaning up. The children treated the house as a playground, jumping on furniture and leaving toys scattered throughout. Marilyn's parents complained constantly about everything from the water pressure to the brand of coffee provided. On the fourth day, things escalated. Marilyn decided to host a dinner party for some old college friends who happened to be vacationing nearby. Without consulting Alicia or checking the rental agreement, she invited 8 additional people to the house, pushing the total occupancy well beyond the permitted limit. They set up tables on the patio, played loud music, and consumed large quantities of alcohol. A neighbor called the property management company to complain about the noise after 11 p.m., the designated quiet hour. Alicia dispatched her assistant Miguel, who arrived to find the party in full swing. When he politely reminded them of the noise restrictions and occupancy limits, Harold Winthrop became confrontational, demanding to know who Miguel thought he was to tell them what to do in a family home. Miguel handled the situation professionally, showing Harold the signed rental agreement with the clearly marked rules. He informed the group that continued violations could result in additional fees or even eviction. The party guests left shortly thereafter, but the tension within the house remained high. The next morning, Thomas called me again. I was having breakfast at a beachside cafe when my phone rang. This time, I decided to answer. "This has gone far enough, Mom," he said without greeting. "Your property manager sent someone to break up Marilyn's reunion with her college friends. Her parents are talking about leaving and getting a hotel. This is humiliating." I took a sip of my coffee before responding. "Good morning, Thomas. I understand there was an issue with exceeding the occupancy limit and noise restrictions last night. It's ridiculous. We're family, not some random vacationers who need to be policed. Actually, Thomas, you're guests in my home and you agreed to certain conditions when you signed the rental agreement. Those conditions exist to protect my property and respect my neighbors. If Marilyn wanted to host a reunion, she should have consulted the property manager or booked an appropriate venue." He made a sound of frustration. "Can't you just call off these property people? Come home and we can sort this out like family." We tried family, Thomas. You threatened to send me to a nursing home when I expressed concern about your unilateral decision to take over my new home. That's not how family treats family. There was silence on the line for several moments. When Thomas spoke again, his voice had lost some of its defensive edge. I didn't mean that. I was just stressed about coordinating everyone's schedules. And that justifies how you spoke to me, how you made decisions about my home without consulting me, how your wife and her family have treated my property. Thomas sighed. Look, things have gotten out of hand. Can we meet somewhere and talk? Just you and me? I considered his request. Perhaps this was an opportunity for the honest conversation we needed to have. Yes, I'd like that. There's a cafe called Ocean Blue 3 blocks north of the house. Can you meet me there at 1? I'll be there. He agreed, sounding relieved. I arrived at the cafe early, selecting a quiet table on the covered patio with a view of the ocean. The day was warm, but not uncomfortably so, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of salt water. I ordered an iced tea and waited, watching pelicans dive for fish in the shallow water. Thomas arrived precisely at 1, looking tired and somewhat disheveled, so different from his usual polished appearance. He spotted me and came over, hesitating briefly before sitting down. You look well, Mom, he said, studying my face. The beach agrees with you. Thank you, I replied. Retirement agrees with me, too. A server came to take his order, a black coffee, before leaving us to our conversation. For a moment, neither of us spoke, the weight of unresolved tensions hovering between us. Finally, Thomas broke the silence. I'm sorry about how this visit started. I should have asked you properly about staying at your house, not just announced we were coming. I nodded, acknowledging his apology, without immediately accepting it. Yes, you should have. But it's more than that, Thomas. The way you spoke to me, the assumption that I would give up my bedroom, the nursing home comment. Those hurt deeply. He looked down at his coffee. I know. I've been thinking about it a lot these past few days, about how I've been treating you for years, actually. His voice grew quieter. I haven't been a good son. The simple admission caught me off guard. I had expected defensiveness, justifications, maybe even accusations. Instead, he was offering recognition of his behavior. What's brought this on? I asked cautiously. Thomas ran a hand through his hair, a gesture reminiscent of when he was a frustrated teenager. Honestly, this whole vacation has been a disaster. Marilyn and her family have been complaining constantly, treating your house like it's beneath them, despite it being nicer than anywhere they could afford on their own. The kids have been out of control because everyone's in a bad mood. And I realized I've been caught in the middle trying to please Marilyn's family at your expense for years. He looked up at me, his eyes showing genuine distress. Last night, after the party fiasco, Marilyn and I had a huge fight. She was angry that I couldn't fix the situation, make the property manager disappear, get you to come back and serve as free childcare while they enjoyed your beach house. And suddenly, I heard myself defending her, making excuses for how she was treating you, and I thought, what am I doing? This is my mother, they're disrespecting. I felt a lump in my throat, but remained silent, letting him continue. I've been thinking about everything you did for me growing up, how you worked so hard to give me opportunities. I never really appreciated it because it was just normal to me. But watching Marilyn's parents with their kids, how they've always expected others to provide for them, I started seeing the difference. He took a sip of his coffee, grimacing at the bitterness. I let Marilyn change me. I wanted to fit in with her family, their social circle. I started seeing your practical, hard-working ways as embarrassing rather than admirable. I'm ashamed of that now. The raw honesty in his voice moved me. It was as if the entitled man who had called me a week ago was being replaced by the thoughtful boy I had raised. It's not all your fault, Thomas, I said gently. I contributed to this dynamic too. I always gave you everything, never asking for appreciation or respect in return. I taught you that my role was to provide and yours was to receive. That wasn't healthy for either of us. He nodded slowly. So what do we do now? Marilyn's parents are talking about leaving tomorrow, getting a hotel in Miami instead. Jake and Laura might go with them. Honestly, I'm relieved at the thought of them going, but it's creating a lot of tension. That's for you to manage, Thomas. They're your guests, not mine. But as for us, I think we need to establish a new kind of relationship. One, based on mutual respect and clear boundaries. And what does that look like, he asked. I took a moment to consider my response. It means recognizing that I have my own life now separate from my identity as your mother. It means asking rather than demanding when you want something from me. It means acknowledging the sacrifices I made for you without being asked to make more. And it means teaching your children to value family relationships that aren't transactional. Thomas was quiet, absorbing my words. Finally, he said, I want that too. I want Madison and Lucas to know their grandmother, the real you, not just someone who gives them presents at Christmas. And I want to rebuild our relationship if you'll give me the chance. The sincerity in his voice brought tears to my eyes. I reached across the table and took his hand. I'd like that very much. We talked for nearly 2 hours, delving into painful truths and old hurts, but also sharing moments of connection that had been missing for years. Thomas admitted that his marriage to Marilyn had been struggling for some time, their values increasingly divergent, especially regarding family and money. I shared my feelings of exclusion from his life and my grandchildren's lives, the pain of being kept at a distance. When we finally parted, it was with a tentative plan. Marilyn's parents and siblings would indeed check out of my house the following day, continuing their vacation elsewhere. Thomas, Marilyn, and the children would stay for the remainder of the originally planned 2 weeks now with plenty of space in the house. I would remain in my rental villa, but would spend time with them each day, getting to know my grandchildren properly and rebuilding my relationship with my son. As I watched Thomas walk back toward the beach house, his posture lighter than when he had arrived, I felt a sense of cautious optimism. The painful lesson I had been forced to teach had yielded unexpected fruit. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, there were still many challenges ahead, but it was a beginning. A beginning built on honesty rather than obligation, on respect rather than expectation. I returned to my rental villa and sat on the terrace watching the waves and reflecting on how differently things had turned out than I had anticipated. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for others is to show them who we truly are, to stand firm in our truth, rather than contorting ourselves to meet their expectations. It had taken me 61 years to learn this lesson, but as the saying goes, better late than never. The months following that pivotal summer brought changes I could never have anticipated. Thomas and Marilyn's marriage, already strained before their disastrous beach vacation, did not survive the aftermath. By Thanksgiving, they were living separately, with Thomas taking an apartment near his office in New York and Marilyn remaining in their Brooklyn brownstone with the children. The divorce was finalized by spring, a relatively amicable separation given the circumstances. Thomas called me regularly throughout the process, often seeking not legal advice but emotional support as he navigated this major life transition. Our conversations were more open and honest than they had been in decades, with both of us working to build a relationship based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Marilyn retained primary custody of Madison and Lucas, but Thomas had them every other weekend and for extended periods during school breaks. He made a point of bringing them to visit me in Florida, several times staying in nearby hotels rather than assuming access to my home. Each visit was arranged with proper notice and consideration, a marked change from his previous behavior. During these visits, I got to know my grandchildren as individuals rather than distant relations. Madison, now 9, was artistic and sensitive, with a talent for drawing that reminded me of Thomas at her age. Lucas, 6, was rambunctious and curious, constantly asking questions about the ocean and its inhabitants. Both children were initially shy with me, conditioned by years of limited contact, but gradually warmed up as they recognized my genuine interest in their lives. Thomas changed in ways both subtle and profound. He left his high-pressure consulting position for a smaller firm with better work-life balance, taking a pay cut but gaining time with his children and for self-reflection. He started therapy, working through issues stemming from both his childhood and his marriage. Most significantly, he began to see me not just as his mother, but as Edna, a woman with her own life dreams and identity. As for me, I embraced my beach community with enthusiasm. Betty remained a close friend and introduced me to her circle of active retirees who organized everything from book clubs to beach cleanups. I joined a watercolor class, finally pursuing the artistic interests I had set aside during my working years. I volunteered at the local Marine Science Center, guiding school groups through exhibits about ocean conservation. My house truly became my home, a sanctuary designed for my comfort rather than to impress others. I finished decorating each room exactly as I wished, with colors and furnishings that brought me joy. The porch became my favorite spot where I would sit for hours watching the changing moods of the ocean, sometimes alone with my thoughts, sometimes sharing wine and conversation with new friends. 6 months after the beach house incident, Thomas visited on his own. It was a significant moment, his first solo trip, to see me rather than as part of a family obligation. He arrived with a small suitcase and a potted orchid, asking rather than assuming if he could stay in my guest room for the weekend. We spent those 3 days reconnecting as adults. He helped me plant a small garden of salt-resistant flowers along the side yard. I showed him my favorite local restaurants and the hidden coves where the best seashells could be found at low tide. In the evenings, we sat on the porch talking until late about his childhood, my marriage to his father, the mistakes we had both made, and our hopes for the future. On his last night, as we watched the stars appear over the ocean, Thomas turned to me with unusual solemnity. "I need to thank you properly, Mom," he said. "Not just for this weekend, but for the lesson you taught me last summer." I raised an eyebrow. "You're thanking me for the vacation rental scheme." He laughed. "Yes, actually. It was exactly what I needed, though I couldn't see it at the time. You could have yelled at me, cut me off, or just given in. Instead, you found a way to show me exactly what I was doing wrong without destroying our relationship in the process. It was creative and effective. It made me see myself clearly for the first time in years. It was a risk I admitted. I wasn't sure how it would turn out. The best kind of parenting often is a risk," he replied. "You've always been braver than I gave you credit for." His words touched me deeply. For so long, I had defined myself primarily as Thomas's mother, measuring my worth by his success and happiness. Now, paradoxically, as I had stepped more fully into my own identity, our relationship had strengthened rather than diminished. A year after the beach house incident, I hosted Thanksgiving at my home. Thomas came with Madison and Lucas, who were now comfortable enough to race into my arms upon arrival. My friend Betty joined us along with 2 couples from my watercolor class and their families. The house was full of laughter, the kitchen bustling with collaborative cooking efforts, the dining table extended to accommodate everyone. As I looked around at the gathering, so different from the family holidays of the past that had been dominated by tension and unspoken resentments, I felt profound gratitude. By standing up for myself, by refusing to be diminished by others' expectations, I had not lost family but gained authentic connection. I had not sacrificed relationships but transformed them. The journey had not been easy. There had been painful conversations, moments of doubt, and old habits that needed conscious breaking. Thomas and I still occasionally fell into our former patterns, with him making assumptions or me giving in too easily. But now, we could recognize these slips and gently correct course, approaching each other with compassion rather than defensiveness. What surprised me most was how setting boundaries had freed not just me, but Thomas as well. Released from the distorting dynamic of entitlement and resentment, he had found his way back to the thoughtful, caring person I had always known he could be. In protecting my own dignity, I had inadvertently given him the chance to reclaim his. Life continues to unfold in unexpected ways. Thomas is dating again, more cautiously this time, selecting partners based on shared values rather than social status. Madison and Lucas visit me regularly, sending drawings and school projects between visits. I have expanded my volunteer work and even started consulting part-time for small businesses, sharing the expertise I developed over decades of entrepreneurship. My beach house remains my sanctuary, but it is no longer a fortress I need to defend. It has become a gathering place for genuine connection, a home where boundaries are respected and love is expressed through consideration rather than control or obligation. The greatest lesson I learned from that challenging summer was that true family bonds are not maintained by sacrifice, but by mutual respect. Love that demands the diminishment of either party is not really love at all. By reclaiming my right to exist fully as myself, I created space for Thomas to see and appreciate me as I truly am, not just in my role as his mother. If you are facing similar challenges with family members who take your generosity for granted or fail to respect your boundaries, remember that standing firm is not selfish, but necessary. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for those we care about is to show them our true worth, even when that means saying no. The relationships worth keeping will survive and often strengthen through this honesty. Those that cannot withstand the light of truth were already built on shaky foundations. Has someone in your family ever assumed they could use your home or possessions without properly asking? How did you handle it? Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about navigating complex family relationships with grace and strength. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that it's never too late to teach others how to treat you with the respect you deserve.